I think, again, the structure of the program gave me stability and gave me confidence in that moment, because even though that one aspect of my recital was not coming together yet the way I wanted it to, pretty much everything else was. Or, I could think of it in that perspective, at least. Like, this one thing I'm maybe not happy with right now, and there's room for improvement here, but everything else is going really well. And I just need to trust that if I keep going through this process, if I keep trusting this process, that my piccolo playing is going to keep improving too, just like everything else has. And the reality is that it did. By the time I got to my recital, that piece went really well. And it was even a piece that a few people came up to me afterward and said, like, that was my favorite thing on your program. But
that's a strange feeling, isn't it? Like,
it is.
It's a really strange feeling. The thing you felt like you struggled with, someone then telling you that was their favorite thing. It's like, I feel like that's a mind warp for me to, like, I start to rethink, like, what is actually important,
Right. Absolutely. And that's not to say that I don't still want to do some work on that now, because I definitely do, as I start to rethink, like, what fundamental aspects of my playing do I want to target now. But the too long didn't read version of what I just said, I think the program helped to expose areas of my playing or areas in my technique that I now am really excited to, like, dig into and make better. And frankly, that was an added bonus of going through the program to prepare a recital that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
Yeah. So at the end of this 2-week process, now it's a month in, you got 2 weeks left to your recital. How are you feeling?
I felt really good. I felt really eager to start doing run-throughs. I think the one doubt I had in my mind at this point is the endurance factor, because I had played 1 or 2 recitals in the past where everything went really good until like the 40th or 45th minute. And then, like, on that last piece in the program, I would start to have some endurance issues, and, sometimes would squeak through, sometimes would maybe not squeak through so much. And so I still had a little bit of doubt, or there was a little bit of unknown in my mind pertaining to that specifically. But I was also playing a lot. I was getting through the program every day. Then I was also playing quite a bit in lessons. I'm a teacher who models a lot, and some of my students are younger too, so I model for them more. And then this is something I haven't mentioned up till this point yet either, but I was also still gigging through all of this. And in the past, when preparing a recital, I would basically turn down, like, any gigs I got called to do because I was so worried about making sure I had enough time to prepare. But I didn't feel that way working on the program, because everything was so organized and well laid out that I felt like I did have capacity to still do some work on the side. Not to dog like rabbit trail off there to the side, but I think it's relevant to what we're talking about. So.
No, I think that's a huge part for someone like me who has become busier over the years. Having the ability to have this program where I can sit down and I could just focus all of my efforts on that, for a period of time. And then when I'm done, I can let go of that and go do the next thing, sort of be present for the next thing. It's hugely helpful to be able to reach for sort of big goals in the context of being very busy. When you're a student, like, everything is revolving around, this is the only, really, there's many different classes and things like that, but you can orient your life towards, this is what I want to do, so to speak. I want to just do this one thing in my recital, and I can put all my efforts toward that. But yeah, when you have a family and a job that requires you to drive an hour, and you have students to do, and then, honor bands to adjudicate, or whatever that particular festival was. So I think it's just super important that it allows you to still live a life but reach for these goals and just not have to accept, well, I'm too busy to be able to really do this. Obviously, the other really big implication is something like an audition. You can take an audition in a busy season of your life and still prepare well. The last phase, the last 2 weeks, is where everything shifts. There's no more programs. There's no more metronome. There's no more, really no more almost detail work. It's like you've done the detail work, or ideally you've used the previous 2 programs to do tons of detail work. Now you're just going to run the program and start to get used to what it feels like to remember all of those solutions, right? It was all about recall. We're trying to recall the solutions, but in the context of the piece and the recital itself. So walk us through what this was like for you. Even if you want to kind of talk about how many you did per day, or, almost like the timeline of run throughs, if there's any sort of hitches you ran into, also what days you took off, how you were feeling. Like, does this make sense? Just kind of walk us through as much of this process as you can, because I think this is a really cool part of the process where you really go from like, I'm still unsure to like, okay, I got this.
Yeah. This was a really fun part of the preparation, because essentially I was done worried about, can I play this? Can I not play this? And it was just, I'm going to go through this recital program. I'm going to make as much music as I can, and I'm just going to have fun. During this time, as Ryan alluded to, I ran a 3-day honor band festival at Wright State with some of my colleagues. And then I also adjudicated like a jazz event that was an all-day thing. And even with all that other stuff going on, it was really not much of a challenge to find the time, or the motivation for that matter, to just get that work done and get that run through in. I would say most days I did 1 run through. There were some days where I did 2, just to add a little bit more of a challenge from that endurance perspective, and see if I could get through that program twice and still feel good. And when I did do that, I would usually do one of those run throughs earlier in the day, like before noon, and then do the second run through later in the day, either before dinner or after dinner, something like that. And I was still doing, my daily fundamentals routine and warming up, plus sometimes practicing a little bit for a gig or something like that I knew I had coming up. So doing a substantial amount of playing, but feeling good. And all those moments in my program that maybe in the past would have made me sweat a little bit, really felt great. And they were very consistently there, which helped me really shift my thinking to more about making music and being less worried about technical aspects of trumpet playing. I would even argue that my primary goal shifted less towards playing the trumpet and more just towards focus in general. What was interesting is when I did make mistakes, which were much less frequent than in the past, those mistakes would often be like pretty simple things. Like I would just chip the first note of a phrase, or that lick I had not practiced that much that was on my easy list. I would just like flub something, and I would realize, oh, I'm drifting right now. My mind is not focused on the task at hand. And that was really more the culprit of mistakes at that point than it was any lack of proficiency or ability on the instrument, which that was an interesting thing to experience, because that got me thinking on a whole nother train of thought about what is focus, what does peak focus in a performance setting look like. And there are some things I'm excited to experiment with related to that, just in my career as a freelancer and as an orchestral performer and some of those other things that I do. So